was about 15 miles away. I was actually in a deer stand, and when the explosion went off, it actually shook the tree I was in, and then you could see the shock wave go across the woods, rattling the limbs and knocking leaves off. I knew it wasn't a test immediately, and made some calls and got over here to volunteer as fast as I could.
At 9:17 a.m., Tennessee was torn apart by a sound that no one could mistake. A deep, earth-shaking explosion thundered through Hickman County, so violent that windows shattered miles away and the sky turned a sickening gray. The Accurate Energetic Systems Facility, a military explosives plant trusted with some of the nation's most sensitive materials, was gone, flattened. Nothing but smoke, twisted metal, and silence. Within hours, authorities confirmed what many already feared. 19 people were missing. Later, that number changed to 18. One body found, the rest presumed dead. Workers who had shown up that morning to earn a living, trusting that safety measures were in place, never made it home. Sheriff Chris Davis stood before reporters visibly shaken. His words were simple but heavy. The AES building is gone. He called it one of the most devastating scenes of his entire career. But what he didn't say, at least not in that moment, was that this tragedy didn't come out of nowhere. Because behind the blast lies a trail of ignored warnings, questionable oversight, and a company that for years had operated under the radar while handling materials powerful enough to destroy entire city blocks. As federal agents and local responders combed through the wreckage, an unsettling question began to form. Was this an accident, or the result of something much deeper? The AES facility wasn't just another industrial plant. It was part of the U.S. military's explosive supply chain, a system built on secrecy, regulation, and trust. The company's operations included processing and storing volatile compounds used in defense weaponry. But this wasn't their first major incident. In 2014, there was another explosion at the same facility. No deaths that time, but serious injuries. OSHA investigated, fines were issued, promises were made, and then silence. A decade later, history repeated itself, only worse. People who live nearby say they heard smaller detonations in the days leading up to the blast. Others talk about chemical odors that drifted across the town when the wind changed direction. Workers had allegedly voiced concerns about equipment malfunctions, about safety shortcuts, but no one wanted to slow production. Why would they? AES had contracts to meet, lucrative government deals that kept the plant running and the pressure high. Then came Thursday morning, a normal workday, until it wasn't. The explosion ripped through the main structure, sending shockwaves so powerful that seismographs in nearby counties recorded it as a minor earthquake. First responders arrived within minutes, but were met with an inferno of smoke and flame. The entire building had collapsed inward, leaving nothing recognizable. For hours, families waited outside the security perimeter, crying, holding photos, begging for updates. Some shouted at officials. Others just stood there, in disbelief, realizing they might never see their loved ones again. One woman told local reporters, "My husband texted me 5 minutes before it happened. He said something didn't feel right today. That's the last message I'll ever get from him." That kind of grief isn't just personal, it's systemic. Because every tragedy like this comes with paperwork that someone once signed. Reports, inspections, approvals. And somewhere in those pages lies a moment when someone decided that a potential risk was acceptable. By mid-afternoon, the FBI had taken over. They set up tents, blocked media drones, and restricted the airspace over the site. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives joined in. Forensic teams were brought in to analyze residue samples and identify the chemical compounds involved. But what stood out wasn't what officials said, it's what they didn't. No one would confirm what exactly the plant was producing in its final days. No one explained why multiple agencies, including the FBI, were called in so quickly. And no one answered the question that everyone in Hickman County was asking. Was this explosion preventable Records show that AES had faced several minor safety citations in the past, small fines resolved with paperwork. But OSHA's archives reveal a pattern of repeated issues: inadequate ventilation, mishandling of inflammable materials, and lapses in training. Each violation came with the same promise: we'll fix it. But in industries that handle explosives, fixing it isn't enough. You prevent it, or people die. This is where the story starts to get complicated and controversial. According to leaked procurement data, AES was recently involved in a new Department of Defense testing contract. The goal? To refine detonator stability for next-generation munitions. In simple terms, they were working with unstable materials, compounds so volatile that even a slight temperature shift could trigger combustion. Yet the facility wasn't upgraded for that level of risk. Old infrastructure, minimal climate control, reports of faulty sensors. And now, it's gone. A former employee who asked not to be named described conditions inside as unsafe but manageable. He said, "We all knew something could go wrong one day. We just hoped it wouldn't be us." Those words now haunt the survivors. But maybe the most disturbing part isn't the explosion itself. It's what happened after. Reporters were pushed back. Local news outlets complained that access was being tightly controlled. Even aerial photos were restricted under the guise of security. When asked why federal agents were so quick to assume control, one official simply said, "The nature of the materials involved requires discretion." Discretion. That's the word they use when they don't want the public to ask too many questions. Yet, for the people of Tennessee, questions are all they have. Why were federal defense materials being processed in a facility with a known safety history? Why did regulatory agencies allow AES to keep operating after its 2014 explosion? And how much did the government really know about what was happening inside that building before it blew up? Each passing hour adds to the mystery. 18 people are gone. The company's leadership is silent. And while officials assure the public that the air is safe, environmental groups are skeptical. Chemical residue has already been detected in nearby streams. Farmers report a metallic taste in their well water. What was released into the environment that day? And if this was a military-grade compound, what are the long-term effects on the surrounding communities? These are the questions that define true investigative journalism, the ones officials avoid and families demand answers to. But one thing remains certain: this explosion didn't just destroy a building. It exposed a system built on complacency, one where accountability always comes after disaster, where safety violations are negotiated away, where the price of silence is measured in lives. The AES tragedy is more than a headline. It's a mirror reflecting how easily oversight collapses when profit, secrecy, and government contracts collide. And as the FBI digs deeper, the truth may turn out to be far more uncomfortable than anyone wants to admit. So stay with us, because this story isn't over. We're only at the beginning of uncovering what really happened inside that Tennessee facility. Who knew the risks, who ignored them, and who's trying to hide the truth now? If you care about accountability, if you believe that lives should matter more than contracts, subscribe and stay alert, because the next revelation in the AES explosion investigation could change everything we think we know about safety, secrecy, and the real cost of defense.